So happy Monday, cold Monday from Adelaide. Welcome to the last session of nutritional biochemistry. And our aim is to today understand pH balance of our body. Um, Now, I'm hoping that you remember a little about kidney. Not that because it will be asked in the exam, but just to understand that maintaining an appropriate pH in our fluids is kind of the key role of kidney. That's why there is a very small activity on your LMS to brush your previous knowledge. Then today our focus would be to look at some of the minerals that act as electrolytes and how do kidney and those electrolytes, they help in maintaining blood pressure in our body. I'm assuming that you have learned about this in your bioscience, and I'm also hoping that this will be repeated in your pathology subject, where you will learn about the medications that keep a check on our blood pressure. So today I just want to give a brief overview and maybe highlight a couple of nutrients that are important in that pathway. Now, the latter part of the session where we talk about acid-base balance, this is a controversial area. Why? Because some people really believe in it and they attribute all disease conditions to a shift in pH balances of our fluids, body fluids. However, because not many researchers have tested these facts among humans who have these disease conditions, there is a lot of voice, a lot of incoherent voice. So my aim is that I don't want to talk about it. I would like you people to have a look at the review paper, and I've found one. And maybe I'll ask you to read just one para and we will discuss it. So because it's a controversial topic, I don't like saying one aspect of it just myself. I would like you to have a look at it and say your perspective. Okay, let's start. Couple of slides on importance of water in our body. You all know there is 60 to 70% of fluids in our body. Amount varies with age, body size, composition. Then, in order to understand the importance of fluids, we have classified them on the basis of where they are located in the cells. So there are some that are present inside the cell. We call them intracellular. Some which are present outside the cell that we call extracellular. And then there is some present elsewhere in our important organs such as in the lungs. So that's the pleural fluid. Some is present in between our spine tissue or in the heart cavity or in the liver cavity. So that's the scientific name, pericardial and peritoneal. And together we call it as interstitial fluid. And people actually monitor it if somebody has a coma, they have gone into a kidney failure. So those hepatic coma. So on those really serious conditions, uh, the surgeons may have to monitor this particular flow. Okay, help me out. Why do you think water is important?
Sorry, Mansi, can you repeat the question again?
Yeah, that's fine. I'm asking, what are the functions of water?
Function, yeah. Well, it's our solvent.
Yes, Jane is
But
right.
for all the biochemical reactions, so in general.
Yes. So they help in cellular respiration,
Yeah.
correct? Chemical reactions, yes. What else? Yes, Tracy, assist in waste elimination.
What else?
What else? Very good, Jane. It helps in regulating blood pressure because as soon as body senses that it's going down, body tries to increase the level of fluids because that's one way of increasing the blood pressure. Tracy is saying digestion. Yeah, I think so. What about body temperature? Do you think fluids somehow help? And you know, we have our organs, they need to be lubricated. So it's kind of, it's the same for our skin, isn't it? We feel loss of moisture. So it's kind of providing that lubrication and protection to our organ tissues. And one that we are going to study today about acid-base balance. So we are losing water in urine, in sweat, when we are having respiration, and we are consuming it through various sources. Drinking tea, coffee. And there's one more aspect that it is in water, all the micro minerals that we studied in session 4, some of them, they are able to dissociate into electrolytes, such as sodium, potassium, chloride, phosphate, calcium. So there are actually many, and they are important for various reasons because we carry out certain signaling activities because of these minerals that act as electrolyte. And body is actually trying to maintain a critical balance of these electrolytes. So definitely, along with electrolyte, body is keeping a balance with water also. There are various factors involved here. Apart from electrolytes, there are certain other compounds present in the water. You know, your fatty acid are moving around, glucose is moving around, but there are also proteins there, such as albumin. So these electrolytes and albumin, they exert pressure on our arteries and veins. So kind of that pressure is a way of body judging whether electrolytes are high in number or low in number. And then body tries to maintain a balance by diffusion, reabsorption of certain nutrients from the kidney, so that the balance in the fluids is maintained. So I know there are a couple of words in this slide: osmotic pressure, then we have colloidal pressure and hydrostatic pressure. So colloidal pressure is the pressure exerted by proteins in the fluid. Hydrostatic pressure is caused when our heart is doing the pumping action. And the main aim of all these electrolytes, all this pressure, is to maintain balance between cations and anions. So cations are the positively charged ones and anions are the negatively charged ones. And there's a particular balance that our body is trying to keep. You all remember what is osmosis, isn't it? Osmosis. Would anybody like to refresh? So that's movement of water from area of high to low, low to high. Concentrations.
High to low.
Yes, thank you, Francesca. Thank you, Jane. Yes, thank you. So that's what's happening in the cell. And you know, I'll share something very interesting, that when I was doing my PhD, I also studied the impact of these microminerals on DNA. And how DNA, as I have shared earlier also, I isolated lymphocytes, and then I'll look at the DNA of those lymphocytes, their growth, their mitosis and all that. And it was fascinating for me to note that when concentration of sodium or calcium or potassium, it shifted by micro molecular level, the cells, the lymphocyte cells, they either died or they were damaged. Because there is a technique where I can count, you know, I look at the electron transport chain, sorry, not transport chain, electron microscope. Sorry, I'm still in session 12. Okay. So I looked under the electron microscope and I could count the number of apoptotic cells and necrotic cells. That means the cell that has died and the cell that is damaged. And then I could associate it with the concentration of sodium and potassium. And yeah, the study has a lot of limitations, small sample size and all that, but I have visually seen this, a dead cell and necrotic cell, and I could find associated with the change in the concentration of sodium, potassium, calcium, to name a few microminerals. The point is, this is how imperative is to maintain a fluid and electrolyte balance. in which kidneys play a major role. Distribution of water directs all these pressures and forces so that we can have a homeostasis. So the major cation in the sodium is, in the ECF is sodium, and major cation inside the cell is potassium. But tell me, can excess water can also be harmful? Water is so crucial. Is there an access? Is there a RDI for water?
Never heard. I'm not sure.
Okay, that's okay, Francesca. Tracy and Jane are saying yes, excess of water can be harmful. Yes, but how do we decide that excess? Tricky, isn't it? Because everybody is again so different. Some people are thirsty, they can have about 3 liters of water a day, whereas some they don't even take 500 ml. And I had a friend who during summers also she could stay without taking water. And I'll be so concerned that she might have an issue with her kidney. She might have kidney stones or something because she's shifting the alkalinity of her urine and body fluids. Yes, excess of water can be harmful. If we drink too fast, then what our kidneys can handle, it can lead to coma, convulsion. And yes, Jane, you are right. It causes hyponatremia, which is diluted plasma. Too much water, that means there is change in the electrolytes concentration. The movement and sodium, potassium inside and outside is hindered.
So is there an indicator for that?
Yes, there can be certain indicators, and we'll come to that.
Okay, thanks.
I'll touch upon that. Everyone feeling okay? This was kind of very simple facts. Just trying to appreciate that maintaining fluid and electrolyte balance after an exercise during summers is so important. Not only keeping a balance of nutrients and food or herbs and supplements and medications, we need to be mindful of that water. Now coming to blood pressure regulation in our body, which actually requires the fluid and electrolytes. The name of this system is renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system, which we abbreviate as RAS. Okay? In your exam, I'm not expecting that you remember the steps in the pathway, but at least remember the name of the components, that is renin, angiotensin, and aldosterone. Okay? What this system does is that whenever our body senses that blood pressure is going down, And how would body know that? Because there are arteries going everywhere in the organs. And the organs sense that ECF, extracellular fluid, is going down, which means sodium is going down because sodium is the main electrolyte in the ECF. And in a way, wherever sodium goes, water goes. So if somebody has lost a lot of sodium, there is a potential of their blood pressure going down. I'm saying potential, it does not happen all the time because this system, RAS, comes into play in a healthy individual. Okay. Now, let me explain this through this figure. Step 1 and 2 kind of happen together. Okay. But ideally, there is a slight mistake in the animation. Kindly correct it. So first step is that in response to low sodium, low blood pressure, liver senses it first and it starts secreting angiotensinogen. This is the name of an enzyme. Now, obviously, angiotensinogen comes in the blood. This now is sensed by the kidneys. Okay? Kidneys start releasing another enzyme called as renin. And renin is able to convert angiotensinogen to angiotensin 1. Why? Because this is the active form. Angiotensinogen is a precursor. It is not the actual molecule that can do anything. It needs renin. See, it is not finished yet. Only 2 organs have been involved so far. So maintaining our blood pressure throughout the day, day after day, also require lungs. Because when that angiotensin comes in the blood and it reaches the lungs, lungs have the ability to produce angiotensin converting enzyme. We abbreviate it as ACE. Does that name or abbreviation sound familiar? ACE. Maybe those of you who are studying pathology or medication. Yes, Jane. This is the step, or this is the enzyme which is inhibited by some of the blood pressure medications, such as perindopril and quinapril. I think its brand name is Acupril or Coversil. So most of these medications, they act at this level. They can inhibit this enzyme's release so that blood pressure is not increased, because the purpose of RAS is to increase blood pressure. Now what happens? ACE is released and now ACE goes back to the kidney and it tells the adrenals to start it converts angiotensin 1 to angiotensin 2. That acts on the adrenals and it gives them the order that I need aldosterone. So our adrenal glands, they start secreting aldosterone, which increases sodium absorption. It causes vasoconstriction and thereby it elevates blood pressure. Wow, such a complex mechanism that our body does in seconds. Just being mindful that aldosterone can also reduce potassium, okay? Because body has to maintain the anion and cation concentrations inside and outside the cell. So when aldosterone is absorbing, is instructing kidneys to reabsorb sodium as a barter system, our body may lose potassium. Questions at this stage?
No, it's all clear for me. Thanks.
Great, thank you. So remember the name of the enzyme, and that this is the system that tries in maintaining our blood pressure. And angiotensin 2 actually works at various levels. Apart from being a vasoconstrictor, it may also stimulate our thirst center. Then it also sends a message to hypothalamus, which starts releasing vasopressin, which is your ADH, antidiuretic hormone. An interesting thing is that vasopressin needs arginine. It has this amino acid in its structure. Just those extra things which sometimes I say is that now they are trying to test whether arginine supplementation can work for women with preeclampsia. Very initial research that they are trying to do, and maybe because arginine is required for vasopressin, not sure. Now, in this diagram, we are reviewing how vasopressin is helping in maintaining fluid balance. Okay? So it reduces urine output. It stimulates certain receptors in the kidney. Okay? These are called as aquaporin. So when the body needs to conserve water, under the direction of vasopressin, we start diverting certain transport channels in the structure of the kidney at the collecting duct, so that there are channels through which our body can take water inside. Just simply one of the mechanisms through which vasopressin is acting. And again, I'm trying to emphasize how intuitive our body is, and it has ways to manage conditions at the time of need. Few more things here, that not only angiotensin 2 and aldosterone, what Jane mentioned earlier in the session, we have ANP, atrial natriuretic peptide, that actually works against aldosterone. So body's way to keep a balance. If there is too much water, this system comes into play so that we can get rid of that excess water in the urine. So already there is a contraindicatory systems in the flow. Now let's try to think where we can use any such information in our nutritional speculations and clinic. When do you think you will be inclined to think that this person has some problem with their fluid and electrolyte balance? If a person has low urine output, what do you think would be happening there if we focus only on the information we have learned so far? So let's keep it only to urine, fluid, electrolyte, BP, something like that. So Jane is saying that if somebody has low urine output, that means that they are retaining water somewhere in their body. Okay. Okay, good, Tracy. Yes, absolutely right. It also kind of tells us that they are not drinking enough water. Now start thinking about the age groups and activity of the people when this can become an issue. During winters, we don't take sufficient water sometimes. Athletes, yes, Tracy, there can be an issue. What about elderlies? Do you think that? Yes, thank you, Jane. I was exactly thinking the same thing. Yes, and I know many people, including my mom, if she has to be out on some work, she won't drink water. Because then, yeah, yes, definitely. Okay, thank you. That's awesome. Now let's think about if you have a client who comes to you with peripheral edema. Now here it's okay to think about few other conditions, kind of. Tracy is saying people can have edema in their lower part of the legs or in even fingers as well if they have taken too much sodium. So that's indicating high blood pressure, do you think, Tracy? And that's kind of connected to what Jane has written in the chat box, that it might be cardiac related. Yes. Okay. Yes. Again, coming to that last dot points on this question box on the slide, if the client has high BP, low urine output, then you need to look at the periphery. Put your fingers on their feet and try to look whether they are retaining any fluid there, because this is giving you an indication that there is a cardiac issue happening. Okay? Again, because of hypertension. Very good. Thank you. Yes, Tracy, hypertension can affect many systems. I'm just thinking, do I want to say something else here, or anybody else would like to ask a question here or comment on something? Again, thinking about something other than what we have discussed here. Pregnant women, at the later stage of pregnancy, third trimester, they can also have peripheral edema. That can be because of some other reasons, including high blood pressure. Jane is saying it's an indication they may have renal disease. Very good. Yes. So just being mindful that these two systems, they impact each other. And in fact, if people have a long-standing hypertension, then you can get their renal function test. They sort of do a MRI where they ask you to hold water and they try to look at the function of arteries in your kidneys. So that can tell you the impact of hypertension and whether it is leading to kidney damage. Okay. Tracy is asking a good question. Are there any genetic mutations within the RAS system? Possibly, Tracy, but I'm not aware of. My understanding is that even if there is a small SNP, as this is a very important function of the body, we are able to carry it out even with small SNPs. If there are kind of direct mutations in these enzymes manufacturing, I'm not aware of any condition as such, sorry. Okay. Let's move on. Now we talk about the functions of electrolytes in the body fluids. Apart from water, they are also very important in controlling osmosis. They help in maintaining acid-base balance in the fluids. Remember, calcium, sodium, they are carrying electric current. Sodium, potassium pump, calcium channels. So they are imperative when body is carrying out its signaling, which can be when our skeletal muscles, they are doing their function, when neurotransmitters are being transferred from one neuron to other. So everywhere we need these electrolytes. They serve as cofactors for various enzymes. So let's kind of now talk about some of the important ones. And we have talked about them when we studied microminerals. So I'm not going to go in detail, but maybe emphasize on some of their functions when they are acting as an electrolyte. Hence, obviously, we will discuss sodium first because it is the most abundant ion in the extracellular fluid. It is involved in nerve impulse transmission, muscle contraction, electrolyte balance, etc., etc. And in our body, there are various hormones that are playing an important role to keep our body in a sodium homeostasis. And they are aldosterone, ADH, and AMP. Now, I want you people to comment on the last dot point, which is written on this box, in this box. Are you aware about it?
So, Mans, you're asking why there is an increase in calcium in the urines?
Yeah. And are you aware that dietary sodium can increase urinary calcium excretion?
Um, because if the sodium increases through the what is the symporter or the anti-symporter pumps, the calcium get
Awesome. Awesome, Francesca. Spot on. Very good. Yes.
yeah, good.
Oh,
That's where to start the week.
See, no, that's telling me that you have started applying your biochemistry. That's what it's telling me. Wonderful. Okay. And Jane has also commented something in the chat box. Very good, Jane. High dietary sodium can increase risk of osteoporosis. Can I ask you to expand? How, why, or anybody else want to join in? Some of you must be thinking, what are they talking about? But it's okay. We will discuss it out. Yes, Jane is saying there is loss of calcium from the bone when we take too much sodium, mainly through processed food. And I'll just add one more thing because I am always trying to confuse you, isn't it? Even too much of potassium can be harmful. It can do the same. And a couple of years ago, I was studying something, all these fizzy drinks, they add a potassium salt in it. Okay? And have you heard consuming too much sugary drink can harm your bones? That's one of the reasons. And you have that fizzy drink with a KFC or that burger, which is full of sodium. Okay? Now, are you understanding why that is happening? Something what Francesca mentioned. Would you like to comment on that? I'll come to Jane's question in a while. Let's finish this discussion. Okay, so what Francesca was saying is that when too much sodium is in the fluid, obviously the pH changes, okay? And kidney senses it. So kidney tries to get rid of that sodium. But because this is an exchange between the ions, then we need little bit of calcium to keep a balance. And obviously we are not consuming calcium in the diet because we don't take enough green leafy veggies. So body has the ability to leach calcium from the bones. That's what happens. So yes, too much processed sodium is associated with increased risk of osteoporosis. Whatever inconsistent data is out there regarding acid-base balance, this is one aspect which we are sure of. There is sufficient data about that. Just one more extra bit I'll add in here that I do nutrient calculation for a particular food joint. It's a health joint, and they are amazing. They are making all these healthy foods made from scratch. But in some of their vegetarian dishes, they are adding soy sauce or miso. Even if they're trying to add gluten-free soy sauce, all their dishes are so high in sodium. And again, because we have such a healthy relationship and I've been doing it for 2-3 years, I keep pointing it out that in this dish, your sodium is going off the roof. And when you will I think you might have applied your food analysis software. It gives you an indication that sodium levels are 20% higher than RDI. And this we are talking about 100 grams portion. And in 100 grams portion, the sodium of a healthy food can also go up by 20-30%. Just telling you to be mindful of looking at sodium. Now coming to Jane's question, can it affect cardiac function as well? Because calcium has a role in cardiac cell contraction. Yes, Jane. Yes, definitely. And in fact, low potassium, high potassium can also impact heart. Okay? What I'm trying to say is just be very careful about the amount of potassium that goes in the supplement, especially for a person with heart condition. Okay? Dale is asking, why does it use calcium instead of bicarbonate? We'll come to that, Dale, because bicarbonate is a buffer and it is transiently present and its role is to take away excess hydrogen. There is a particular chemical reaction it can carry out which does not involve sodium. That's the reason, and it will become clear as we move on. Yes, Jane, it will affect the contraction of any muscle, including cardiac muscle. Okay. Then chloride is the another one. It is the anion. So it has a negative charge and it is present in the extracellular fluid. It is the one that is responsible for chloride channels. It is regulated by ADH and it helps in making our hydrochloric acid. Potassium is the most abundant cation in the intracellular space. Again, it helps in membrane potential, helps neurons, muscle fibers, pH, and it is also controlled by aldosterone. Now look at next point. I just want to convey a couple of points here, which kind of we have been aware of in quite recent past. People who are diabetic and who have insulin resistance for a long time, they are observed to be deficient in potassium. There are a couple of reasons for this. And again, it's kind of a tricky thing, and we don't know the root of the reason of this happening. But what we know is that when insulin needs to be released from the pancreatic cell, remember islet of Langerhans, beta cells of islet of Langerhans, they need potassium. That's one reason. And second reason is that when insulin is responsible under the direction of insulin, potassium is moved inside the cell. Okay? Yeah. So the point I want you people to remember is just be mindful that too much insulin is an issue for potassium deficiency. The point to remember is that if in future you have a client who's coming to you with long-standing diabetes, or you notice that they have insulin resistance, please include potassium-rich foods in their diet or look at the symptoms for fluid imbalance. And we can do it. There is something that we can do it to check that imbalance. Okay? Another important thing is potassium is so important for maintaining blood pressure. So people who come to you with high blood pressure, if you include potassium in their diet, it can down-regulate sodium and thereby assist in maintaining blood pressure. So tell me, what are the foods that are rich in potassium? Aha. Bananas. Tracy, when we as health practitioners say high source of potassium, we means per 100 grams, okay? We want to look at what are the values. So again, before you go in the clinic, have a table for yourself in which all the highest sources of potassium or other nutrients are listed, because as far as my memory go, banana has moderate amount of potassium. There are some foods that have higher potassium. Okay. I'm okay with nut pot. Jane is saying spinach, avocado. Yes. Yes. I want this to explore it yourself. To look at the NRVs. I know it was long back, but get into a habit on looking at the Australian data, and please don't look at American or those websites for rich sources of nutrients. You know, mung beans? Mung beans has got much higher than banana.
Which beans? Which beans?
Mung beans.
Mung beans, yeah. Manti, can I ask you something?
Yeah.
I keep forgetting. I mean, in integrating everything that we are learning, I have trouble now. For example, for this question, you know, like what are the foods rich in potassium? And I can't remember. Like I get confused. I wonder if there is a way, like a resource, where it actually classify food apart from the Australian nutritional, because you have to go through all of that. If there is a resource that is that categorizes foods by, I don't know, the highest amount of a nutrient.
Yeah, again, those resources, Francesca, are done by practitioners or some people who are practicing, and they might be sourcing that information
Okay.
from the location, geographical location they are in. Hence, my aim that you are directed towards Australian data. I have written the names in the chat box. So you type the food and the entire nutrient classification will come up. I know some of you think that they talk about only the canned foods or the processed food, but they do involve fresh fruits as well. Okay? Like, you know, again, I'm going to give you an example. Yesterday, while doing my own calculation, I was trying to look at dried mushroom, and I could not find in this tab. Then, because that product was made in France, because we are getting things from everywhere. So for that, I had to rely on the food label, and I had to believe that they have written the right thing. So again, I encourage you that before getting into the clinic, get your table going on. of some of the foods that are rich in potassium, low in sodium, high in certain amino acid, lysine and all those things, because they are so important for viral infection. And then you will have some printout ready for your clients also. You can educate them. So that's the best way, and I use it. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Welcome, Francesca. That was a good question. And I will look forward to somebody giving me a list of potassium-rich foods, okay? On the loop. Take your time and do it on the loop. Moving on to bicarbonates, so they are most prevalent extracellular anion. Their concentration increases when body has to get rid of carbon dioxide. I'll give you this. Oh, no, okay, it comes up later. So we will talk about how that thing is happening, because body is continuously dissociating and making hydrogen bicarbonate in its effort to remove excess hydrogen from the body fluids and carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide can then be excreted by exhalation. It's a continuous process which is happening all the while. We all know about calcium, and we have discussed about how it is under the control of parathyroid hormone as well as vitamin B. And I think the question I've written here already, Jane has discussed that in the chat box when she was asking about what will happen when we lose calcium, when body is trying to keep a balance with sodium. Another electrolyte is phosphate, which actually has different forms, It can be present as these forms, H2PO4, PO4, etc. Again, why and how is it possible? Because it is kind of a buffer. It has the ability to become friends with hydrogen molecule, and in doing so, it helps movement of that acidic hydrogen molecules to get excreted in the urine. And magnesium is the last one in this list. How important is magnesium, we all know, but it is also important as an electrolyte, because 46% of it is present in our intercellular fluid as magnesium 2+, and very small amounts are also present in ECM. It is a cofactor for sodium-potassium pump. See, even these electrolytes, they're big as a big happy family. They help each other out. Magnesium supplements work wonderfully well if somebody is stressed, if somebody is muscularly fatigued, and it can be absorbed via skin. That's why Epsom salt are amazing in helping somebody. It releases anxiety as well because it is supporting the synaptic transmission. Let's take a 10 minutes break. Is that okay?
Yes, yeah.
Cool. And then, we will continue with acid-base balance. Let us now talk about acid-base balance and regulation. So you all know what is a pH. Its values can range from 0 to 14. Value less than 7 indicates that a solution is acidic. This acid-base regulation is the function of electrolytes and water, which are component of our body fluids. It is vital. Okay? It is so important because the enzymes that are working, they need a particular pH. Have you noticed what happens when we squeeze a bit of a lemon on fish? It is able to cook it, isn't it? That means the amino acids, the proteins, they degenerate when there is high acidity. So think about our enzymes. They are all proteins. So if there is a change in pH, the body's normal processes cannot happen at a certain rate. And remember when we studied about folate, its transporters, they require a unique pH. So that's the key reason that acid-base balance is of such an importance. Now, whatever we are eating, it is being metabolized into certain chemical compounds, and their end product that reaches urine or kidney can actually give us an idea of what is the net endogenous acid production. And we'll talk about that a bit later. Here, let's talk about what's happening with the fluid first. In our blood, we are trying to keep a pH within this small range. Can you see that? 7.36 and 7.44. Very tricky. But again, body is amazing. It knows how to do it. That is where we use certain volatile acid like carbonic acid, H2CO3, which needs bicarbonate ions, the point that Dale was discussing in the chat box earlier. And then we also have some non-volatile acids, which help in excretion in the kidney. Now, we will in the slides now go through a couple of these buffer systems and then look at a little deeper how kidneys are managing hydrogen. Again, we are not delving into the deep biochemical pathway, but we are trying to have a superficial understanding and kind of remembering the electrolytes or micronutrients that are playing important role. So let's first look at the chemical buffer systems that are acting in the body to keep a acid-base balance. These are your proteins, carbonic acids, and phosphate molecule. How does carbonic acid functions? This is the equilibrium reaction, chemical reaction that is happening all the time. Now the thing is that by this directly we cannot remove hydrogen or carbon dioxide. But what we are able to do is that if we have sufficient carbonic acid, we can absorb one extra hydrogen molecule. Then we can dissociate it into carbon dioxide and water. It is happening all the time. So that carbon dioxide gets exhaled and water gets excreted. And why we are doing it? So that that hydrogen which can add to the acidity can be removed from the flow. That's the basic reason. So what happens if this is not happening properly? What is not happening properly? This bicarbonate and carbonic acid reaction. If this is not happening properly, there might be excess of carbon dioxide, there might be excess of hydrogen, which may actually lead to derangement of acid-base homeostasis. And our lungs can play some role there. If there is low pH, if you look at this diagram here on this slide, if there is low pH, there might be an acidosis. This is sensed by our brain and respiration rate may increase. Why? Because we want to get rid of that carbon dioxide. As a result, we make H2CO3. Again, just trying to bring to your attention that this is the reaction which is happening, and pH can be increased because now this is going on the other side. Okay, we are using that carbon dioxide to make H2CO3, which can actually dissociate into HCO3 and H. So now we have more hydrogen ion, so pH would increase. Whereas if we have the other way around, the reaction will go towards the other side. But we are more concerned about renal regulation today. There are various ways through which kidneys can get rid of hydrogen ions. Either they use that same formula, HCO3 or they can excrete hydrogen ion individually, make it part of the urine, or they add it to ammonia. Okay? So this is how renal elimination of hydrogen ion is occurring. Now that's what is explained in these couple of slides. I know it can be a little complex, but I'm really trying to simplify it, that whenever body is trying to excrete that hydrogen, body's aim is to keep an acid-base balance, and bicarbonate is very, very crucial there because it adds to that hydrogen atom. So if you look at this picture here, this is the mechanism of excretion of free hydrogen. On your right side is the tubule of kidney. And again, that same reaction is happening on either side actually. And what is body doing? Just juggling that hydrogen outside. Okay? Hydrogen comes outside, it attaches to bicarbonate, makes hydrogen bicarbonate, which we can immediately dissociate into water and carbon dioxide. Water gets excreted, so we get rid of that hydrogen. Carbon dioxide comes again inside. Why? Because we again need to make that hydrogen bicarbonate. Okay? So that's kind of the cycle. And that's the reason that urine can be really acidic than pH. Okay? Normal pH is actually around 4.5 to 6.5. And this should be happening in a normal person. Their urine can be slightly acidic, but not too much acidic, because then this system may fail. And then second mechanism, I'm sure you all remember that we can make ammonia, and then ammonia is converted to uric acid that we can excrete. Okay. Now let's come to its application, that how can we test it and how is it relevant for us. Okay. Dale is asking, so would calcium buffering of sodium be a fourth regulation, or is it part of the renal regulation? Dale, it is a compensatory mechanism. It is not normal thing which is happening. There is so much sodium that kidney have to go away from the bicarbonate system, and it has to reach out to bone resources, bone reservoir. So it is a compensatory regulatory mechanism. Did I answer you? Okay, good. So can you look at this slide? I've given a link. If you click on it, you will get an idea that we can calculate whether we are in metabolic acidosis. We are not going into detail into respiratory acidosis or alkalosis. We are talking about metabolic because that's what we can shift through dietary interventions. And we can check that because there is something called as anion gap blood test. And this can actually run some mathematics, and I'm not very good at it. So I'm hoping you will learn that in your diagnostics, that in this test, they measure the electrolytes, they measure their percentage, and then they are able to give us some indication that this person has metabolic acidosis. So anion gap is actually the difference between the number of cations versus anion. That is sodium, potassium, chloride, and so on. They measure all of them. Okay. So this is answering what Francesca asked earlier in the session, that can we test the electrolyte imbalance? So one is that you can look at a person's diet recall, you can look at their skin, whether it's dry, you can ask whether they are having those twitching, muscle twitching, that can also give you an indicator. And if you want to test it in the lab, then anion test can be done. The normal value should be around, I'll type it in the chat box, it's about 8 to 12, and the units are milli equal per liter. So that's the normal one. Again, when you will go into diagnostic, you will have that report, and laboratories do tell you whether the value is deranged or not. So then you can pursue it further. We are coming to that, Dale. Okay. Dale is asking, in regards to pH, are foods like lemons considered acidic because they are directly acidic, or they are alkaline because they become alkaline once metabolized? We are coming to that, Dale, and it will become clear. Okay. When we discuss about can diet modulate pH. This slide is listing few of the terms that you would read in books and papers. They actually mean the same thing. And what does that mean? Net acid excretion. It means the net acid excreted by the kidneys. What does that mean? It means when we eat certain foods and then we metabolize them to an acidic residue or alkaline residue. That's what we are measuring. It does not mean that if something we are eating is acidic, is going to remain acidic when it reaches the kidney. Does that answer your question, Dale? Okay. So it is what our body is metabolizing food into, and whatever is reaching the kidney. If the end product is too much hydrogens to the kidney, that food is classified as acidic food in this hypothesis term. Okay. So what are the foods that are creating that acid alkaline imbalance? Certain drugs can do it. In certain disease conditions, we can have that. And I have kind of taken this picture from Nash. I think it's an American data. Yes, this is the source of sodium chloride in the American diet. And what it's, again, the point is, as the kidneys and lungs get rid of most but not all of these acid generating food, the system may start to fail and body may have to rely on the compensatory mechanism of leaching out calcium. And this happens when people are dependent on animal foods and processed food. That's why there is this understanding that alkaline forming diet is benefit, because it comprises of veggies and certain fruits, that can balance out too much acid reaching the kidney. So we are talking about Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, leeks, peas, almonds, lentils. They are considered low alkaline food, whereas high alkaline would be your spinach, parsley, broccoli, sprouts, and all those green veggies. That's why that effort on green juice, green smoothie. Okay. So you can see this classification has nothing to do with the components of that food. What they are saying is that increased fruits and veggies is good for maintaining acid-base balance. Okay. It is controversial, yes. It's kind of tricky as well. And how do we calculate is, we calculate it by doing that crawl score, this one. Where did it go? Yeah, crawl. Potential renal acid load. Okay. So now let's discuss this, okay? Have a look at this paper. I have given a link in the chat box. If the link doesn't work, just type this heading: acid-base, dietary acid load, and bone effects, a controversial subject. Once you have opened it, you will notice that there are two paragraphs. One talks about its positives and lists a couple of studies to do so. And the second one kind of what do I say? It discourages this particular research. Okay, so choose whichever you want to read, but read just one para. Take about 10 minutes, read that para, look at what they are trying to say for prawns and for prawns, positives and the negatives, advantages and disadvantages, and maybe then come back after 10 minutes and share what you understood and whether this is something you would like to use or not use in your product. Is it okay?
I've read the opponent's thesis.
Okay.
Yeah, well, it seems compelling. It says that, you know, if bones were to be the main source to buffer the acids, the net acid balance, we would not have any bones anymore.
Yes, they are quite convincing in rebuking the theory, isn't it?
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, it seems convincing that, but I don't know. I didn't read the other one, so I'm not sure. It's hard to make an informed position. But it's interesting to see how they have brought together all different studies and analyzed how actually the bone component does not really have a big influence, like for example in the treatment of osteoporosis.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Francesca.
That's all right.
Anybody else who read maybe the proponent section? One thing I found was that the way the analysis is done, they have pointed it out that people who are in favor, they actually use very small studies that were not adequately controlled. And I understand at this stage it is very hard to kind of criticize some of these studies. But hopefully, as you move on, you will read more papers and you'll become an expert in critically appraising them.
So when you say small studies, you mean in terms of numbers of cohorts?
Yes.
Cohorts?
Numbers and the size of the cohort, and it should have been done globally.
Yeah.
People coming with diverse geographical location and background, but still their parameters should be same at baseline, so that when we give an intervention, we can see the difference.
Yeah, thank you.
Anybody else?
I noticed that when they done the studies using, I think it was K citrate, which I think was a highly alkaline substance, it seemed that they had that the markers showed that bone growth was happening more in the higher alkaline sort of substances that they were being given. but they didn't really account for the person's diet in general. Or so it seemed to me anyway. So I don't know if that would make a difference with all the other people in the study, because I think one of the studies had 4. It was a high K citrate, a low K citrate, then just a base, and then one was with 300 grams of extra fruits and vegetables. But then they also didn't say which fruits and vegetables. So I don't know if even with the bone health, when you're eating a diet, you're not just eating acids, you'd be obviously getting alkaline substances as well. And I think when it comes to the bones, trying to buffer it all, why would the body just keep getting rid of the bone? Like, I don't think that would happen. So I think instead of doing that, wouldn't it store the excess acid in the fat cells in order to reduce that load from happening on the bone? And then you get diseases like, was it like edema, where it's stored up, but it's over stored up. Now it's in the interstitial fluid as well. So it's like the body needs a break from getting rid of the bone, and it starts storing it. I guess that's what I guess that's my understanding of it.
See, what we read so far is and understood so far is body cannot store hydrogen. Body has to excrete it, and kidneys have to do it either way, by making more ammonia, by doing something. But you are right when you say that these studies, they did not look at somebody's dietary intake. They did not look at other electrolytes, fluid intake, because that will also impact how body is using that potassium citrate.
Yeah.
So yes, we need to look at these studies the way you are reviewing them. That could be one reason that there is no consistent finding about this particular topic. And again, one of the other points that you said, that which fruits and veggies.
Yeah.
And fruits and veggies have some other benefits rather than just giving us phosphorus and potassium. They do something much more at different levels.
Yeah.
So they didn't measure that, whether some other biomarkers were improved, which may have indirectly supported or not supported the kidneys.
You have just confused me as well then by your statement before, because you were saying that the body can't hold on to or store hydrogen, so therefore the body will have to get rid of it. But you made it sound like before that the bone buffered like sodium, and it was the bicarbonates that buffered the hydrogen. So wouldn't it have no issue with hydrogen, because it's got nothing to do with the bone? It's got more to do with the sodium balance.
Yes, it has. But again, that if we are consuming that high sodium in, let's say, processed meat, then we are making more hydrogen as well.
Okay.
And I am not aware whether body can store hydrogen. As far as my understanding, from what we have studied so far, and let's looking just from here, that hydrogen has to be removed because because enzymes won't work properly. Now, coming back to your point regarding sodium and calcium, that's happening from a different pathway. It is not the normal thing that is happening. Normal is we eat meat, or we eat veggies, or we eat tomatoes, or we eat broccoli, and we have that bicarbonate and hydrogen imbalance going on. Excess sodium and calcium relationship is discussed only when we are changing our dietary habits. We are consuming maybe more sugary drink and more processed foods. That is shifting kidneys compensatory mechanism towards that calcium dependence.
Isn't
Did
that,
I still confuse you?
yeah, I was just going to say, isn't that what would be happening though? Because the person's obviously either too alkaline or in this case too acidic. So therefore the compensatory regulation would start to come into play because it's not normal anymore. You're not supposed to be highly acidic.
It should come up again according to the proponents. That's
Okay.
what they are saying. But then they are not giving us a lot of details
Yeah.
as the other ones. So we want to know more. Why is this happening? Where is this happening?
With you say that it can't store hydrogen. If hydrogen's a component of water and edema seems to be a high water load, wouldn't that be
Yes.
storing hydrogen in a sense, I
Again,
guess?
yes, but again, it is the way that compound is present in the body. It's not present as hydrogen. It is present as water, which is of no harm unless there is more sodium. So there will be edema when there is more sodium, which will draw water towards itself. It goes hand in hand. It cannot
Okay.
exist alone, you know?
So in essence, it's not storing free hydrogen,
Yes.
but it can store hydrogen if it's
As
bound to
water.
something else.
Yes. Yes.
Not just water, but it could be bound to anything, I guess.
Yes, it could be bicarbonate, hydrogen bicarbonate, it could be
Yep.
something else. Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
cool. That makes sense.
Great, great. Thanks for that question. Okay, Jane is asking something. Seems viable, but I feel like it's very reductionist and not enough of a big picture when it comes to the other factors. Yes, agreed,
Definitely.
Jane. Kind of similar to what Dale is also trying to point out, that we need to know more about this. So kind of that's the slides actually have been made from proponents' perspective, which should not be the case. So I agree with you all that we need more information. The point they are saying is that, you know, fruits and veggies are generally high in potassium, and animal foods are rich in methionine and cysteine that may create some acidic load. This is their classification based on that understanding. And then I have uploaded a couple of more links in the chat box, which talks about diabetes and osteoporosis and how this imbalance can play a role. Again, whatever is written in the slide is coming from only couple of researchers, again, that are proponents. But we have already found that that is not so convincing. One point they also make is that, can we use it as a prevention? They say one may be, because we are reducing uric acid load, because when we are consuming high meat, we are metabolizing purines into uric acid, and that may change the alkalinity or acidity of the kidney. Again, it's controversial because it is coming from a small study, and it will also depend upon how much fluid that person is taking, how much calcium a person is taking, because too much calcium along with uric acid can lead to kidney formation. So do they have some benefits? Maybe. Okay. So that was my objective, kind of putting both the perspectives. I did not want only one idea to be discussed. But otherwise also fruits and veggies have some other benefits. So let's look at from that perspective. Okay? But still keeping an open mind regarding whether certain foods have the potential to create acidosis. So just keeping an open mind there yet. But when you start practicing, you would notice that there are certain therapies that are used to manage this. Micromineral and all those. So be mindful of both aspects and look at anybody very holistically, reviewing not only their diet, but other factors that are happening in their body. Interesting, isn't it? You study and then you say that you are not sure. That's all for today. Unless somebody has any other comment or any other query.
So good for now, I suppose.
Yeah, thanks, Jane. It's again now I know you might be thinking what to remember for the exam. So kind of those things are highlighted in red in this session. Some of the names and some of the electrolytes and their location, which one is abundant in the ECF, which one in the ICF. And maybe, a very short question on few benefits of alkaline diet. Couple of things that you may include is that these fruits and veggies, they are rich in improving potassium and sodium ratio. They are rich in all these dark leafy vegetables are rich in magnesium. So they may support vitamin D activation. They are low GI also. So they would otherwise also help in keeping insulin glucose balance. They may improve uric acid clearance and they may prevent that stone formation. So quite general benefits with a little tweak on that low acid load of this diet. Thank you, everyone, and all the best for your exams. I will be having a webinar on Wednesday. We'll go through the case study question together.
When is it? When is the webinar?
Wednesday.
Wednesday? Okay.
Yeah.
It's
So
on the loop.
Yeah, link is on the subject notice board. I posted last week. And then this week I'll also post that extra information about responders. If some of you are giving this exam for the first time, there are few emergency phone numbers which you can reach out during that time. So I'll post that loop post as well this week. And I might not meet or see you again, or maybe if you are in Adelaide, I'll meet you in the clinic. So best wishes for everything. Enjoy life, health, happiness, and avoid stress, okay? Thank you for your time. Thank you for being with me for all these 13 weeks.
Thanks, Mansi.
Thanks, Francesca.